have amazing guests on the line. We'll be chatting to you about all things entrepreneurship, and we're tackling the topic of the business of raising funding for your small business. So, entrepreneurship is widely acknowledged to be a key factor in South Africa's growth. As South Africans, we acknowledge this, right? According to a study that was done on Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, South Africans have an acknowledgement that entrepreneurship is a good career choice. And more of them say that they have perceived good opportunities for entrepreneurship, with a similar number perceiving that they have the required skills like yourselves. However, only 11% of entrepreneurs actually have an intention of starting a business, well below the global and African averages. Lack of funding appears to be the main deterrent. There are many sources of funding that entrepreneurs can explore, with the likes of your conventional banks, government agencies, along with angel investors, venture capitalists, and personal investors, like approaching your family and friends. So today we will be discussing with our funding experts and entrepreneurs who have tackled the SME funding space for years and succeeded. They will be sharing funding experiences in their own businesses, and most importantly, how they go about funding their own businesses. So before we go into the session today, I would like to highlight some housekeeping issues. Please note that during the duration of the interview, all cameras and audios are requested to be switched off, and you are welcome to ask questions in the live Q&A box on the right-hand side of your screen. Should your question be selected, it will be addressed during the live Q&A session. Remember to use our hashtag YLC, be your own boss. We look forward to this conversation. I hope you have your notepads ready and you're ready to engage with our panelists. Thank you so much. Let's introduce Zizipho, Nyanga, and Piti Mnisi. Thank you so much for joining us, ladies.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks, Matata. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, ladies. So I'll start with just introducing a background of our panelists. We'll start with Zizipho. Zizipho Nyanga is first and foremost a woman, mother, wife, and then a qualified chartered accountant with over 16 years experience in external audit, finance, and entrepreneurship, along with funding. Zizipho was a CEO of Old Mutual Masisizane Fund, where she was driving SMME development and access to funding. Zizipho currently sits on the board of Adept IT, and she's also non-executive of the BMF, Italtal, and Green Dot Bank. She's also now a managing executive for the SME and platform banking platform at Green Dot Bank. She is a recipient of various awards, and we have the honor of having her here with us today. Thank you so much, Zizipho. And introducing Upiti. Piti has over 18 years professional experience and extensive experience in mining, investments, manufacturing, and construction. She is a founder and managing director of a consulting and corporate financing entity, Landscape Cedar Track Record and Testimonials. She is also a co-founder and director of MCOP Investments, an investment holding business with various interests across various sectors. She has extensive experience in corporate governance matters and has also built a successful business for herself. And one point to note as well is that she is on the cover of our amazing magazine, the Ideal magazine. So if you have not read it, please make sure you read it. It is an amazing issue. Thank you so much, BT. So we will start then with Zizipho. Can you just tell us a bit about your entrepreneurship journey?
So mine is no longer strange. I think post-COVID, we've seen a lot of people realizing that you can't rely on one income only. I am in corporate, and my day-to-day job is to help entrepreneurs realize their dreams through funding and also non-financial support. But at the same time, I am an entrepreneur. I've got businesses that I run on the side, mainly driven by the fact that I think we will all agree that we need to have multiple streams of income if we are going to be sustainable as individuals. But my first experience of entrepreneurship was when I quit corporate around 2008, 2009. And unfortunately, it was the worst time to quit and join and sort of embark on an entrepreneurial journey during the economic meltdown. At that time, we ran out of funds. Everything that needed to go wrong went wrong. And bear in mind, my parents had sent me to school to become a chartered accountant. They didn't understand why on earth I would quit my job and join a startup. So that was the biggest lesson. But I think wearing both hats of being in corporate and also in entrepreneurship, which we can talk about later, it helps one, if you're helping entrepreneurs to understand how they face challenges, to sort of know and anticipate some of the problems that they have around cash, around running a business, around access to markets, and all the challenges that we will talk about today.
All right, thank you. I mean, that sounds like a really great journey. And maybe, Peter, you can add on from your side.
Yes, thank you very much. I started my entrepreneurial journey at the end of 2013, left formal employment and established Lynch Pinsider. Yeah, so we're in the corporate finance and consulting space. And then since then, I've also been involved in various ventures. I've co-founded an investment holding business. And I'm also in the angel investing space through Dazzle Angels, Josie Angels as well. So yeah, so interacting with entrepreneurs all the time.
Okay, great. And I mean, you've both mentioned, you have multiple businesses. You've mentioned, Pity, that you've started up multiple businesses. Maybe if you can tell us what has been your greatest challenge in the funding process, and how did you circumvent that?
Thank you very much for that question. I think for myself, the balance sheets and also what I see with other entrepreneurs, balance sheet is one of the biggest headaches for entrepreneurs in raising capital, whether you are starting or whether you have an established business. If you don't have a balance sheet, really, it's the beginning of really striding through muddy waters. For example, with us in MCOP Investment, when we started, so the idea was to look for big transactions and partake in those. And then we realized that we were not really getting too much joy from, especially on the sell side M&A, because in order to partake in big transactions, you need people to be bringing transactions to your table, the advisors for the companies that are selling off the companies in totality or selling a part of the business. And then we realized that if you don't have a balance sheet, people are always like, when you're having a conversation with business owners or advisors, so it's always, oh, where are you going to get though? Do you have committed funds? Or when you start mentioning, no, I still need to, if the transaction, if we like each other, this can work. And then I still need to go and speak to, knock on a DFI and see whether or not this transaction, or my private banker to see whether this transaction is fundable or not. So, and then over time, then we realized that as opposed to waiting on the train track, waiting for these transactions that are not coming, let's create our own pipeline. And then we changed the strategy as opposed to trying to chase big transactions. So what we've done is let's create our own pipeline. So in MCOP Investment, for example, we've got strong projects experience. We can develop projects from concept all the way to feasibility study. So we decided new strategy as opposed to building projects for other people. Let's create our own pipeline, be project sponsors, develop our own projects, and then we can be the masters of our own destiny. The train will find us not at the station, will find us along the way, moving to somewhere, to the destination. So yeah, in a nutshell.
And I mean, that's a really great way to look at it, right? If you don't get a seat at the table, you create your own table. And I mean, Zizipo, what are your views on the funding challenges that you've faced?
Spot on. I think what I would add to what Piti has said is that, first of all, in the SME range, there's different sizes, right? So if you're talking about the small and then the medium, the smaller companies, it's easier then to take the approach of saying, let me start lean, let me see what I can do with what I have, where I am, rather than thinking that I will attract investors or banks or DFIs to invest in my company. So funders will normally talk about skin in the game. It's easy then if you have a smaller business to say, this is the sweat equity that I will put into the business. This is the amount of money that I can put to at least pay for the internet to be able to do A, B, and C. I don't need to go and rent an expensive office. I can work from home. So those are some of the non-financial and financial contributions you can make as an entrepreneur, such that, referring to Peter's train moving, when you go to the DFI or the bank, you are able to say, look what I've done on my own. I was able to invest in my business, and therefore someone else will see that you've got skin in the game and you were able to be resourceful and start lean and not go extravagant to try and show people that you are successful when you are not, which is another problem that entrepreneurs have. They want to seem like they have made it. But if you are very careful about your finances, you would really run a very lean machine and then demonstrate to the funders and the banks how well you've done, such that they are able to trust you with their money.
Yeah. And I think, Zizipo, on your point in terms of having skin in the game, you're also full-time in corporate, you're a managing executive, and you're an entrepreneur. What advice, some of the people on the line, they're both still in corporate and doing entrepreneurship. What advice would you give those people that are double hatting in terms of, dealing with conflict as well? And as well, you just looking at the fact that you mentioned skin in the game. How do they deal with that? Because if I come to an investor and I'm like, please give me money, and you're like, but you work 8 hours, what time will you have to actually invest in this business? What advice would you give to people in that situation?
So I think that the first, thanks for that question, Mutaja. The first thing I would refer people that are employed to is their employment contract. Number one, that employment contract, you better be able to read it and understand whether you are allowed or not to do anything but your 9-to-5 job. The second thing is that obviously you cannot all of a sudden do the same business that your employer is doing. So conflict of interest, without it being complicated or complex, you simply cannot be poaching the clients of your employer, of your organization. So the things that you could do are really outside your day-to-day job and outside the interest of the organization that you work in. Therefore, that you make sure that there are no lines crossed there and no confusion. And secondly, before you want to do a side hustle, you must make sure that you excel in your job and you meet the expectations of your job. I read a lot, and I would advise that entrepreneurs must read. There's a book I want to recommend. I'll drop it on the comments. It's called Side Hustle in Progress by Elizabeth Ogabi. It talks about practical tips on how one can establish their side hustle without necessarily interfering with their day-to-day job. One thing I want entrepreneurs to know is that your job is more like your investor. That money that you need to put aside to be able to invest in your business is coming from your salary. So if you look at your employer as your investor, you are going to want to make your employer happy. Because if your employer is not happy, they're not going to give you the salary which you need to invest in your business, right? So without blaming financial institutions and saying access to finance is the biggest barrier, yes, it is the biggest barrier. But what other ways can you use to gain the capital that you need? A salary is one of those, and multiple streams of income, selling, Avon products, whatever you want to sell to generate that capital. So those are the things that I can think of, and I'll drop the name of the book on the comments.
Thank you, Zizipo, for that book recommendation. And I mean, you've raised a very important point around you being your number one investor, and before you can look at getting somebody else to invest in you. And while we speak about this topic of corporate, PT, you've had a very successful career in corporate, and can you just share with us, how did you make the decision to leave your job and pursue full-time entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I'd say that, when I was younger, I'm still young, but when I was younger, I didn't really procrastinate. Once I made up my mind, and the bus goes. So I didn't really, once I made up my mind that this is what I want to do, this is what I want to explore, and then it was really an easy decision to implement and execute. And it was actually quite I had strong mentors then, and they're still my mentors now, playing very critical role in the journeys that I continue to go in. For example, Triforsa and Cindy. Triforsa back then, she was still in corporate, and Cindy entrepreneurial, AIH Investment Holding. So to have mentors like that, but not necessarily people just like being mentors, but people that know your work and your integrity. Because back when I was still younger, I served on the AWCA board, so they knew my work, they knew my commitment at AWCA board. So I was able to get sponsor. Like in corporate, you'll say that you must have a sponsor, someone who believes in you. One of the Zizipo mentioned access to funding as the better. The other makulu barrier is access to market. So to have people that are out there that are willing, I don't like to say the word takes the risk, because if someone knows that you can do the job, they've seen you do the job, be willing to open the doors and give you a chance. Really, it's really easy, because once the doors are open, and then it's just really up to you to go in, execute, and deliver. So it wasn't a complex one. And I was not an extravagant spender as well. So that helped. When you count the rents and the cents, it sort of makes sense. You're like, okay, this is my runway. Things really need to go bad before I get into trouble. And then obviously, once Zizi as well mentioned it earlier, as an entrepreneur, you must have multiple stream of income. Otherwise, it's going to be a very biggest headache because it's not it's always easy on paper. Once the rubber hits the road, it's a different ball game altogether.
Yeah, and I see you also emphasizing the point of being your own investor, and like you said, you also focused on how you spend your own money, which is quite a key thing, I would assume, in being an entrepreneur. But Piti, you are a partner at Dazzle Angel, a female angel investment fund. Can you briefly explain what an angel investor, what they are? And what do angel investors look for when they're funding SMEs? I think, we take it for granted as CAs that everyone understands these terms. But, a lot of people, they're entrepreneurs, they're passionate about what they do, but they don't really understand these terms. So can you please explain to the people on the call?
Yes, thank you very much for that question. So angel investing is one of the highest risk. I know, like now in the African continent space, there's a lot of companies, unicorns. People are raising millions and millions of dollars. You're like, hey, I missed that boat. But it is one of the biggest, because of those entities that are unicorns that are announced, having been able to secure funding for whatever the next level of growth. There's so many other that haven't been able to get off the ground. So yeah, in a nutshell, it is a very risky capital, which is why I like angel networks like Dazzle Angel and Josie Angel, because you benefit from the group. Like, for example, at Dazzle Angel, there's 20 of us partners. The women from various sectors, different experience, impact investing, lawyers, financial people, commercial people. So we are able to where I'm lacking, and then there's someone who's very experienced from a commercial law perspective, or someone who's very experienced in that industry. So I like that, because like when you look at an investment, you're able to complement each other when you go into the DD phase. And also because once an angel investing is different to like a normal, if you're to a company that has been existing for many years, things are running as they are. You know what I mean? Is a machine is running, is working, it's working. You're just going to get management account, no drama, no stories. So angel investing, once you put in the money, that's where the real work begins, because you have to work hand in hand. So I did a course with the African Angel Academy. They said that angel investing is like a contact sports. So yeah, so you have to work together with the entrepreneur. Sometimes you get in very early idea stage. So you at that stage, you need to work with the entrepreneurs, make sure that the concept, there's a solid proof of concept. It can be commercialized, because a good idea on paper, it will remain that. There must be a market, and they must be defendable. For example, at Dazzle, what we look for, defendable IP, definitely. The founders are very, very important, because people behind the business, those are the ones that will take the business forward, or let it drown. So, and what else? Yeah, and then being able to scale, obviously. So if you're going to start something, it must be something you are solving something, and then you must be able to competitive. What is your competitive advantage? Because when you start something, I can tell you someone else is doing it somewhere else. So what is your? Sometimes it's not always the best to be the first one, because you learn from all the, it doesn't. There's no formula, but you must have a competitive advantage, be able to scale the business.
All right. Angel investing sounds very involved. I think, just to get Usisipo's views on this, what are some of the financial metrics that are most important for funding opportunities from your side, and taking into account the fact that a lot of entrepreneurs are not financial, some of the entrepreneurs are not financial people?
Thank you for that question. I'm not an angel investor. I work for a commercial bank, and I think what I wanted to highlight first to the entrepreneurs is that the person behind the business and how they manage their finances is important, right? Because the business doesn't run itself. It has the entrepreneur who is likely to be asked for collateral in the form of what personal surety or anything that they can put to secure the bank's debt. So one piece of advice when you're looking for funding and these financial metrics that you are talking to is that entrepreneurs must try and run their personal finances well enough so that by the time they apply for funding, they are seen as people that are responsible for R1, such that if they're asking for 100 million, you're not going to be worried as the funder that the person is going to go and buy a Range Rover the minute the account shows more than or shows a lot of zeros, right? The R1 doesn't have zeros. The minute there's a lot of zeros next to the one, someone can't handle the finances. The second thing is that in a business, the cash generating capability of the business is very important, because remember, we look at the cash flows. Yes, you can have your income statement, your balance sheet, and all that stuff. Is the business generating enough cash to be able to pay the loan that it is taking, to be able to pay for the working capital requirements, stock, and when your debtors are not paying you, are your creditors wanting you to pay them as in yesterday while you are waiting for for your debtors to pay you. So the relationship between yourself and your funder must be that of a partnership, such that if for whatever reason the amount of money that you applied for working capital runs out because your debtors are hit by whatever is happening at that particular time, they're able to pick up the call and say, my banker or my DFI, I don't have money to pay for my creditors or to pay for my employees. Can you extend my overdraft? Can you give me, more working capital? So the cash generating capability, the ability for the business to service the debt, what we call debt service cover ratio, your working capital requirements, the ability to manage your creditors in a way that they don't expect you to pay them early before your debtors pay you. Your ability to know that there is a certain level of stock that you must keep on hand rather than putting all your money in the warehouse on the stock that is not moving. So those are some of the things that we look for. Obviously, the credit scoring model is very important to understand the risk that the funder is taking. How risky is this business? How likely is it to be able to pay the loan or not? And what's the worst case scenario? How sensitive is it to prices in the fuel industry space? If you are in the running a fuel station, if the price goes down or up, what are the likelihood of your cash generating ability being affected to a point that you can't service the debt? Those are some of the things that we look at. And of course, it's important for entrepreneurs not to run a one-man band such that there's a key man risk associated with Mutate because she is everything to this business. If for whatever reason you can't pay the creditors, you are sick or whatever happens, nothing happens and then it affects everything else in the business. So the ability to have the right skills in the business such that you are able to anticipate risks and manage them accordingly, including your financial risk, your risk around sales, your risk around the ability to repay all your creditors.
I hear you. And I mean, risk management seems to be quite a big, a key aspect of this whole thing. But, from your perspective, at what stage do you think that an entrepreneur should ideally seek funding?
That's a very good question. And I think I did say earlier, access to finance is cited as the biggest barrier of entry for SMEs. And I think Peter did mention that next to that, it's access to markets. But I find in the space that people are quick to say the reason why they are not succeeding in their business or they are not starting their business is because they don't have funding. I want to suggest that funding is probably not the first thing that prevents you from going ahead. The ability to say, here is an idea, here is a product or service, where is the market? Have I gone to corporates? Corporates have a lot of enterprise and supplier development programs. They could give you market. So you must be able to check the key ingredients that are going to make you successful in your business. Funding then comes once you've assessed, is it possible for me to start with what I have where I am? And at a point in time on my budgets, ascertain when can I handle debt? Because it's one thing to go and get debt and then your business can't handle that debt. You find yourself having to worry about too many things when in fact you could have done a business model and a financial model that sort of gradually grows your business to a certain point, and you can identify that I am now loss making. I am going to break even at some point, and once I do A, B, and C, I am going to generate enough cash and enough profits to be able to service the debt. There are other forms of funding, for instance, grant funding, not only from government, but also from private sector. Enterprise and supplier development programs have grant funding element in there where you are not supposed to repay the money, but there are conditions that are attached. So there's a number of areas, both in public and private sector, where you can actually get grant funding, and then at a later stage, see where loan funding can come in.
Thank you, Zisipo. And on that point, you speak about funding. Piti, can you just give us your views around, when entrepreneurs are considering getting funding, what would your advice be in terms of giving equity over getting debt? What would you say that entrepreneurs should consider? Because like you, an angel investor, or Zisipo speaking from a banking perspective, you either getting debt or you're giving away equity. What is your advice on considering those kind of factors?
Yes, I think there's got a lot of things actually to consider. That I'll give you an example from the angel investing stage. It depends on where the life of the business, for a lack of a better word. Just imagine at an ideation phase while you're still conceptualizing this thing. So after, they always say that you come in, angels comes in after you've taken money from your friends and your family. And the other F, I don't want to say it. Once that money is finished, then you come to the angel investors. So if it's early, is not actually even practical to put a number to it to say that, what type of, because to do equity, you need a, valuation. What value, or who knows what's in those projections, really. So it depends on the stage. And then, like what Zisipo say, they can be debt, they can be equity. And then in the angel investing space as well, there's SAVE, which, equity for the future. So it's, you sign an agreement now, sort of have mechanism in place where you can, in future rounds, and be able to get an equity from that investment. So I think it's for the entrepreneur, and obviously where you are in a privileged position to say that, can I give debt, can I give equity? So obviously if you can give debt, you must be able to service, Zisipo just mentioned it now, you must be able to service debt. And sometimes debt as well comes with securitization as well. And then on equity is about dilution as well. You're going to be diluted. So those are the things that the entrepreneurs needs to be thinking about. There's also another form of funding, revenue-based funding as well, that other funders likes as well. So there's it just depends where you are, what you can afford. But angel investors normally, when you go in, you don't want to take too much. You want the founders to still be part of this, feel that they are still part of this thing. And when you are still early into the business, you must think about the future, because you're going to raise more funding. So meaning that the dilution is coming. So you need to be thinking of your cap table, what, next rounds, where you're going to be looking from an equity perspective. But as angel investing, you come in early. We want you don't go in and take 40% of the business, because the entrepreneurs must still make this thing happen to grow, and so that you can get those multiples that we all hoping to get.
Okay, I hear you. And I mean, like you've heard, guys, don't give away 40% of your business. It's not advisable. But both of you are funding experts, PT, and you also fund some businesses outside of South Africa. What has been your observation regarding how the South African SME landscape is compared to other emerging markets? And would you say that we're a bit advanced from a South African perspective, or would you say we have a long way to go?
I think there's still a long way to go from a funding perspective, and then again referring to early stage investing. And I'll advise the participants to check out organizations like African Angel Academy. They're running quite a good programs there, educational programs there that are funded by with other co-funded but with other institutions. And then if you look at the African, just looking at now, I'll come back to South Africa, just looking at the African landscape. ABN as well. I think they've been in the market since 2015, 14. I could get the dates wrong. So if you just look at the strides that they've been able to to advocate for angel investing support. If you look at the amount of networks across the African continent that we have now. So there's a recent report that was released about the Q1 2021, the amount of money that flew into Africa funding businesses at various stages. I think it was about 1.8 billion. I might get the number wrong, but people can go check those stats. And South Africa it's out there with the Egypt, Kenya, and Nigeria. But I don't think that I mean, if you look at the quantum of those numbers, comparing them to the sometimes when you just look at your own perspective, you don't really appreciate where you are. But when you take those numbers and put them at where are the other regions, how are they doing? You can see that we haven't started. We just, at least the ball is rolling, but there's still a lot of work. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done. But what's comforting, there's quite a lot of hubs now as well for entrepreneurs, accelerator programs, even one of the JSE listed company, I think early this year, yes, announced in the agricultural space that they are starting a VC fund. So there's quite a lot of activity and a lot of opportunity, exciting for entrepreneurs from different types of funding, because in South Africa, it was always established businesses. When you go to PE firms, they're like, okay, performance for the last 3 years, EBITDA multiples. So when you're still those EBITDA multiples doesn't work. So it's good to see quite a lot of different mixtures of funding coming through from a South African perspective. But what's also exciting also when you look across the entire continent as well.
All right, thanks, Betty. And to add to that, Zizipho, what have you seen has changed in the way that funders are assessing entrepreneurs in light of COVID and the new way of working?
So we've learned a lot, I think, both from the funders and the entrepreneurs. Things have changed. We no longer do business the same way. Business has changed, and we work differently compared to COVID and now. One of the things that I've seen in my space in terms of funding entrepreneurs is that we are unable as funders to go see the businesses of entrepreneurs as much as we did in the past. So visiting a manufacturing plant is not the same as it was pre-COVID. One of the things that is required now as part of our due diligence is entrepreneurs doing an elevator pitch, different from when you relied on us deal makers to present your case to our governance structures. You are now called as an entrepreneur on a Zoom to come and tell us why should, to tell the governance structures, not only us as deal makers, why you need to be given that money. So you can no longer just submit paper and say you're not, as an entrepreneur, you're not very clear about the finances of your business because you are not a financial manager or you are not an accountant. If you are the entrepreneur that's looking for 100 million from a funder, you can be called to come and explain your financial projections and how you think this business is going to perform. Therefore, entrepreneurs are required to be more prepared than ever to be able to pitch, because there's a lot that is expected of them by investors. The economic landscape has changed. Therefore, when they put money into your business, when people put money into the business, they want to know that the money is going to come back. So I think gone are the days where people would say, the application process for funding is onerous, I can't deal with this, let me hire a consultant to do my business plan and look for funding for me while I focus on important things. I've got news for you. Money is also important. Funding is also important. And you are expected as an entrepreneur to be able to plead your case and tell investors and banks and funders why we should put money into your bank, into your business.
Yeah, and that's very true, knowing your business intimately and knowing yourself so that you can be prepared for these pitches. The landscape has changed. Zoom has introduced, this global space where we're all competing and we're expected as entrepreneurs to rise up to the challenge. I think I'll just open it up for some questions that we've had on the line. We've had some comments around, multiple streams of income being the goal, and also creating a differentiated product is vital for any business. I can imagine one would be stuck on the treadmill with any low margins or non-differentiated business. Thanks, Ms. Charmaine. IT asks, at BT, can you elaborate on your work with Jersey Angels? Is it accessible to our YLC entrepreneurs that are on the platform?
Yes, it is. I can, well, the YLC's got my contact details, so I think anyone who's interested must just let me know and then I can get them into contact with the people at Jersey Angel. So on the Jersey Angel is a syndicate, effectively, of angel investors. There's two types of membership. It can be unlimited, effectively for like a year, or limited. I'll explain. Limited is effectively means that on a deal by deal, you contribute towards the DD. For example, there's always transactions flowing through Jersey Angel. They send them through to the Jersey Angel members. If there's a transaction, for example, there's one transaction that we are looking at that we have expressed an interest to invest in. So what will happen is they will have other interested investors there. So it's not a formalized entity. So it's just individual investors as deal comes through, and then you look if there's interest, common interest, and then you look at that deal, share the DD cost, and then effectively take it forward from that perspective. It's quite nice. I like that model, like what I said, to say that, because then you have quite a lot of people viewing the transaction in different. You can never eliminate the risk. Risk can never be eliminated. Even if you are like a multi-billion-dollar business, there's always risk, but obviously different degrees of risk from an angel investing perspective. So to have different eyes looking at the transaction is quite good, and it eliminates the risk as well. You share the risk from a capital perspective.
Yeah, and I mean, angel investing is really giving entrepreneurs an alternative kind of funding. And, as PT has mentioned, that she's available. So we'll share her details after the session. Thanks, PT. And Bianca's asking, what funding opportunities exist within the non-conventional businesses, that is, businesses like broadcasting, media, and art? It is clear that there's a lot of talent in these disciplines with fresh ideas that are on par with digital and technological platforms that are investable. Maybe Zizipo, you can give us your thoughts on that.
Sorry, I'm also trying to find that question, but I think what I would say to that is corporates are required to invest in supplier development programs. Corporates are required to invest in enterprise development. So it's no longer an option, it's a must happen. So you would have seen in the context of South Africa, previously, we weren't seeing a lot of production in broadcasting or media, let me say in general, on the likes of DSTV. Now you see content being relevant to the South African market. I'm sure you would agree with me that the people that are producing the content are people like you and me that know what it is that we are looking for, versus in the past where we were just given things that are not relatable. So in the context of a company like MultiChoice, I'm sure they have a supplier development program where they need to invest in SMEs and grow them, because those SMEs are their suppliers, are their service providers, but because they are required to invest, and it's part of the BEE scorecard, they have a vested interest to make sure that they provide non-financial support and also patient capital to those service providers to be able to provide the very service that they need. So I would say, whether you are in broadcasting or you are in financial services or manufacturing, FMCG, whichever sector that you are in, try and go and look for corporates in that sector. Those that are required to meet BE requirements have a requirement to do enterprise and supply development. And you might find that you get both support in the form of patient capital, and also you are able to address the second barrier that we spoke about earlier in terms of access to markets. So they procure goods and services from you, but they also provide you with non-financial support and patient capital, zero-rated loans or below prime loans. There's a number of initiatives in that space, and I would urge people to just look in their sectors and identify. It's easy. You can go to and look at financial statements of those businesses and see what initiatives they're driving.
Thank you, Zizipo. I love that term you say, patient support. As entrepreneurs, we are patient and we're supporting these bigger companies. And it's a really different and interesting perspective of seeking funding instead of always going to banks and government, actually seeking to go to our suppliers and say, hey, I am supplying you. Can you help me in any way? And is there any way we can leverage of our synergies? Great response. I think to Piti, maybe you can give us our thoughts on Zinhle's question. She's asking, what advice would you give to full-time entrepreneurs whose business is not a side hustle?
This is a general advice of financial.
I don't know if Zinhle wants to specify, but it can be general.
Okay, I'll take it. I'll take an angle on it. It's fine. I think yeah, being an entrepreneur is it is a tough journey ahead. Like that saying is a biblical saying to say, don't despise the powerful scripture. Don't despise the days of the small beginnings. For the Lord rejoices to see the work begin, and then to always be look at. It's always you can look at what other people are doing to get inspiration from there, because you never really know people's challenges and issues and whatnot, because you see what people want you to see. So look at people for inspiration, but also look inward in terms of what you need to do to get your business going, getting in tune. Collaboration is very, 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 very key. And yeah, we're still navigating those journeys ourselves. And I think a lot of people don't, especially younger entrepreneurs, don't understand the collaboration and the powerful impact of collaboration. For example, in the services industry, we feel in the pain for that. When you go to large corporates, they're like, how many employees do you have? We can't give you the job because you don't have capacity. Like, hello, it's a chicken and egg situation. Show me the project and then I will show you the people. Who's going to go and employ on an employment spree of people, get fixed overheads with no work to come? So it's really gets around this wild sea. I found it very, very impactful and powerful, because the same people, same mind, in terms of, we're all pursuing the same thing, want to be successful entrepreneurs, good materials that they have. They get inspiration from those people, but always in a continuous learning. There's never, once you get to a stage where you're like, you know it all, that's where problems begin. There's always an opportunity to learn from other people. That's why key into industry networks, see what other people are doing, and knock on the doors. It's so difficult. Business development is a full-time job. Now I understand why. Where Zizipo works, they probably have a position called business development executive, and they pay him a lot of money. It's a lot of work, and sometimes people don't get back to you. Not necessarily because they're like, I don't like beats. She's irritating me, phoning five. People are busy. They're doing things. Things are challenging. So you need to phone back. You need to, it's tough. You need to follow up. You have that commercial aspect that Zizipo was saying. It's not only about, I'm an engineer, I can design this thing, it can fly with no with just your eyes, this thing can fly into the sky. So you need to be able to be astute with all the other things, commercial, be able to pitch, be able to sell the business, and understand what's happening in a nutshell. I know it's a long-winded answer.
And it's very relevant, right? Because I mean, I'm sure there were more things you want to add because entrepreneurship is such a complex and a personal journey for each person. But you also mentioned around when you're approaching organization and the chicken and egg. How Mam Triforce is asking, how do we mobilize private sector into angel investments?
I think it's when you look at where like they're starting now, a lot of entities, and I saw before this, so there was also, you know, on TV when they blank the Coca-Cola bottle so that you're not advertising. I'm hoping I can say the names because I read about it on LinkedIn just before this. MultiChoice as well. I think they had an accelerator. And then they were talking about the impact that acceleration program has done. I think 200 and something million that these entrepreneurs, the small businesses have been able to secure. So I think people are moving in that direction, but more on the VC side, not necessarily on the angel investing side. So I think once you get people comfortable, especially with the networks, syndicates. So I wouldn't advise, yeah. So people must, that's why I said that collaboration is very key. Like organizations like even you can invest even outside of South Africa through associations with angel networks in Nigeria, for example, in Kenya, so I think we are moving there. The wheel is slowly turning. People are starting to understand. Normally, angel investing was just the American thing back in the day. People didn't really understand it. There's Josie now, Dazzle Angels as well from a South African perspective, and there's quite a lot on the African continent that are coming up. So I think once people are comfortable with that collaboration, you can start seeing people, and obviously people understanding that you don't take your last cent and put it, angel investing, you must be able to put it in and forget about it. So if you're going to it's the money that you need to pay for the school fees next quarter, don't do it. Wrong call, yeah. But we get in there. You can see from a VC perspective, quite a lot of activity.
Yeah. And we're really grateful to pioneers such as yourself that are introducing this angel investing concept into South Africa. I think everyone would agree. Zizipho, there are a few questions on, you mentioned elevator pitches, selling yourself. We have Mam Triforce asking, please explain elevator pitch. How do we train our entrepreneurs into pitching? And a second question linked to that is there a program that pairs financial experts with entrepreneurs in assisting with their pitches and business model for potential investors?
So I don't have a specific program that I can mention, but what I can say is that it's just as simple as being able to present your business in a short period of time, linked to the point I was making to say you can't outsource your business plan. You can't outsource everything. Maybe financial projections, you can get someone to do that for you, but understand those numbers, even though you are not you're not a financial person. The point about enterprise development in corporates supporting SMEs is linked to the fact that you can then say, I need presentation skills. I need to be able to stand in front of investors, in front of customers, in front of anyone, and be able to sell my business. I think also we underestimate the value of the internet and the fact that there are courses online or videos online that can teach you how to present your business case successfully to someone. So I would encourage entrepreneurs to invest in their personal growth and development, attend courses. There are short courses at Gibbs, at BETS, and all these other places. But if you don't have money to pay to go for those short courses, look at the YouTube videos for training and tips on how to do an elevator pitch. It's simply being able to convince someone within a short period of time why they should give you money to invest in your business and whether that money is going to come back or not. So in simplistic terms, it's all about your presentation skills, your confidence, and the fact that when someone is looking at you, they would want to give you their money because they believe in what you are saying. How convincing are you? And how trustworthy are you? It's one thing for you to be convincing, but you must be able in your elevator pitch to convince me as a founder that I can manage my personal finances, I can manage this business. This is what I've done so far, and this is why I need a financial injection to grow this business beyond the point I've taken it. So the convincing is more about facts that you're presenting in this elevator pitch, rather than looking like you're making money when you don't make money, which is the biggest problem for some of us as entrepreneurs. We want to fake it till we make it. There are people that that concept works for them, but for funders, you really want to be truthful that really you've managed the business very well and you are going to be able to manage the finance when you get it.
Yeah. And you keep emphasizing the point of the fact that it's all about you. Can you just share your thoughts? I think our final question would just be around common mistakes, one or two key mistakes you've seen, blunders that entrepreneurs make when they're seeking financing. Maybe we can start with you, Zizipho.
One thing I want to highlight is not taking the time to research the mandate of that particular organization. Entrepreneurs often come to banks or funders at the 11th hour. They've wasted a lot of time knocking at wrong doors. So it's important to understand the mandate of that particular organization that you are going to. If it is a commercial bank, do they fund agriculture? Do they fund broadcasting? If it is a DFI, what exactly do they fund? Do they fund a loan for 1 million versus starting at a higher threshold? And then, of course, separating your personal finances from your business. And then lastly, addressing the key man risk and not wanting to be jack of all trades and master of none. Not everything can revolve around you. Even if you can't afford to hire full-time people, there's a lot of people that offer freelance services, that accountants can be outsourced, and you can get services as and when you need them instead of having overheads that are fixed. That's all I can highlight on my side.
And Piti, on your side?
Yeah, on my side, we've already touched on it. Is that issue of entrepreneurs product driven, especially from a technical perspective. But that's not what you're gonna get. Technically, it'll help you to get the technical solution. But to have a business, it must be a techno viable business. The technical solution must be backed up by a viable business plan. So entrepreneurs needs to go beyond the technical aspects of the business, understand the key drivers. Zizipho has already mentioned those. You need to know what breaks the business, and you can't place over-reliance on advisors. They're important, but even if someone builds that model for you, you need to be able to, you can go to a meeting by yourself to talk about the business. That's how it should be.
Yeah. Thank you so much, ladies. I mean, this conversation has really been insightful. And I think that one key thing you've mentioned and you've touched on continuously in all your responses is about you, right? As an entrepreneur, it starts with you and it ends with you. And it's not to create a key man dependency issue, but it's to just make sure that you're sure of your story, you're sure of why you want to go into entrepreneurship, you understand yourself, you understand your business, and you're always developing yourself, as Zipo mentioned, going on courses as an entrepreneur, just making sure that you are investable on, right? If you were an investor, would you invest in you? I think that is quite a key question to ask yourself. And I love, the point you made about not despising humble beginnings, PT. We know that it's a tough journey. Some days you just feel like, maybe I should just send out my CV. Maybe I should just, leave this and spend a weekend with my friends. But it's worth it. We've seen successful entrepreneurs like Zizipo and PT and the many likes that exist, women that are breaking barriers. And we know that it's possible for us. So thank you so much, everyone, our amazing panelists, Zizipo, PT. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. It's been invaluable to speak to experts in the field. You've shared such authentic truths, and you've spent your time with us. Thank you for sparing an hour, a bit over time. So thank you for being with us. We really appreciate it. All right. Thanks, ladies. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks for engaging with us. As Zizipo, there's a comment that we will be recommending the book that you recommended to us to have for our book club. We have a book club. So, thank you as well for recommending that. Thank you, ladies, for joining us. Please note that our next event is on the 4th of May. We will be tackling the topic of digital payment networks and how to make them work well for you and your business. Thank you for joining us. Have a lovely day and evening further, and bye.